Based very, very loosely on the Michael Parkinson type of show. We are able to chat to 2 or 3 guests, find out a little bit about them, and ask them a few questions, and see what's happening in their lives and what they're doing. We're very privileged. We've got 3 very important people today. Unfortunately, they're not going to come to the platform, but we're going to use the others who are here. And we're going to say, and we've got a little interlude as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to An Hour With, and I invite you, please, to greet my first guest, Captain Dean Palance, editor of the Salvation. Hello, Dean. Yes, yeah. I need to sit down with you because it looks a bit odd with me standing next to you. I thought I was quite tall. How tall are you?
I'm 6'8". When I went to territorial headquarters about 3 years ago, I got on a lift, one of my first days, and the lift goes from the ground floor all the way to the 9th floor. This little retired officer, she looked retired. She should have been retired. Anyway, she got in the lift. She got in the lift with me, and she looked at me, and she said, "You frightened me." And I said, "I'm really sorry." And I just stand with her all the way, going to the 9th floor, feeling very guilty about that. So I really don't want to frighten anybody. You know.
It doesn't frighten you, does he? He's a little puppy, really. You ask the staff he works with. And tell me a little about yourself and this history. Where did you come from? Where were you born?
I was born in Africa. Both my grandparents were Salvation Army officers, so and we were appointed out to Rhodesia in the late 30s, early 40s, so just before the war, just after the war. So my mum and dad grew up in Africa, and that's where they met and married, and that's where I was born. So I grew up, first 18 years of my life were in Rhodesia, which became Zimbabwe.
Right, fine. And what about you and the Salvation Army? Because obviously you were dedicated and forward to the...
I was dedicated. I grew up in Salisbury Citadel Corps, which was a wonderful corps, and I would guess that anybody from the UK could have walked into that corps on a Sunday morning and felt very much at home. It was mainly people like us. It was singing company, YP band, songsters band, Christmas caroling. You just did it in your shirt sleeves instead of your overcoat. You know.
Very, very good. And so when did you actually come over to England? Was it with Mum and Dad?
No, my mum and dad still live in Cape Town. My dad actually went out when he was 11 to Africa, and he came back when his parents were appointed back. He came back as about an 18-year-old in about 1952, and he had one winter here, and he said, "I'm not having another." And he's never been seen since. He appears occasionally in summer, but he's never seen. I went to university in Cape Town. I worked in the mining industry as a personnel officer, and then I worked in a manufacturing company, made roof sheets and pipes. I was a personnel manager, but I felt the call to officership when I was about 15, and I felt that I should come to the UK to train. It was never in my mind that I'd go anywhere else. It was always that I'd come to the UK. When I got here, one officer said to me, "Why didn't you go to Australia?" I thought, why didn't I go to Australia? Beaches, sun, you know, but that was never in the thought. The thought was always to come to London, and so I moved here in 1990.
It was a good decision.
Yeah, absolutely. No regrets.
What was the training session?
I was a Herald of Jesus.
Herald of Jesus. 1990.
91 to 93.
Excellent, fine. You're married?
I am.
Yes. When did you meet?
I met Iron in the training college.
Right.
We met at breakfast.
How is that actually possible? Well, you know, given that you're 6'8", and how tall is Iron?
I don't know, 5'2"? 5'2", 5'3".
I was just thinking, did you ever actually see her? Did you know what you were getting into?
We don't do dancing.
You don't do dancing.
I remember going to breakfast and seeing this girl. The corps officer, my corps officer sent me to training with General Shaw Clifton, as he now is. And he said to me, I've been to the training college for many years teaching. There are not many nice girls there. You know, don't get your hopes up, mate. Well, I did have my hopes up because there were only 2 men in my session and 19 women. So I thought, chances are pretty good here. But I also thought I'd have a look at the second years, and Iron was a second year.
Right.
And so I wrote to her, I decided I wasn't going to do any of this courting stuff. I wasn't going to do any of this. I'm not interested in it, because people watch you in the training college. Oh, you know, he's interested in her. So I wasn't going to do any of that. So I just wrote her a letter. And I said, I think, you know,
God's told me that we should go out with each other.
it wasn't, no, it wasn't spiritual, no. I said, I think you look all right, and I think we could, you know, I think we could be quite good together.
And is that the time she wrote back and said, who are you?
No, she just said no, no. And then, the next day, she invited me to meet her parents. So I really couldn't understand, because she said no to me the day before, and then the next day she said, no, come meet my parents. And after that, we were together. We got engaged about 6 weeks later. She asked me to marry her, and I couldn't say no. And, you know, somehow I got married.
That's pretty amazing.
It was frightening, yeah, but it's great.
Yeah, that's very, very good. And what did the Salvation Army do with this young married couple when they left training?
Oh, they were very cross. Because Irene's a doctor, and they had her all lined up to go to Africa and be a missionary on her own, and they were not very happy that we got together. And we were told we were going to go to Ghana, and then at the last minute they changed their minds, and they said, no, you're not going to go to Ghana, but we're going to send you to Woodbridge. And they're still recovering. So we went to Woodbridge, and we had a very happy 3 years in Suffolk. Really enjoyed it, and our both children were born in Suffolk, and yeah, we had a very, very happy first appointment.
Excellent. So life has gone downhill since then. What's your present appointment?
My present appointment is editor of Salvationist, and I've brought you some free copies. And so if you'd like a copy, there's some at the front, and there's some at the back on your way out. And even if you've got one back at the core, please don't tell the course secretary, oh, I got mine free, I'm not paying for it this week, because that will really get me into trouble. But if you'd like to take one to read this week and maybe give to a friend in the core who doesn't take the paper, because I'd really like people to take the paper.
Salvationist, as an avid reader of Salvationist, of course, you know, I want you to know that it's changed an awful lot in the last year or two. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, when I was asked to be the editor of Salvationist, I laughed, because I just never saw it coming. You know, as an officer, you look around and you think, well, what job will they give me next? You know, and I you know, you guess, you think, well, I might be asked to do that, I never dreamt I would be asked to be the editor of Salvationist, never for a minute. And so when they asked me, I said, well, why? What do you want? And they said, we want a fresh look at it, we want somebody to look at it very differently, and we think you're the person. So I said, well, I'll do my best. And it's been a real privilege, because I've got a very good team of people around me, and I rely on them a lot. And what we are trying to do is to produce a paper that is available to a wide range of people. The challenge with Salvationists is you're talking from people who are, say, 15, maybe our youngest readers, right up to 105, I think, is our oldest reader. There might be somebody older than that who can tell me, but that's the sort of the range. And so that's really challenging to try and meet those ranges. So we tried to put news on the front cover for a few weeks. I tried to do that a few months. We went that way, because it had been pictures with Charles King. And then we've decided now to try it again. I think one thing, I've got a couple of people here who are my soldiers. We've got folk from Woodbridge, we've got folk from Rugby. And, oh bless you, thank you very much. But what they'll tell you is that I don't like things the same. I do like to move the chairs around. You know, if you want to upset the congregation, move the chairs. I believe in moving the chairs. At Rugby, I've destroyed the whole hall, you know, but you see, if you leave things the same for too long, people settle into it, and they think, well, I know what that is, I know what's going to come now, and it gets predictable. Now, I don't believe in change for change's sake, but I believe that we must always be looking for how to do it new, and the newspaper market, the magazine market is very competitive. And I watch what other people do, I see what they do, and I think we all have to work very hard to keep our readers.
Right, excellent. So there will be periodic changes.
Yeah, I mean, we've made a big change now. I don't envisage anything immediately. We've made a significant change in the last 3 or 4 months with a picture front cover and with a more magazine-y look. And I'm happy. I had a pretty good reaction to those changes. But I'm grateful to hear comments from readers. I've got somebody here today who's spoken to me beforehand who wrote to me and said, look, I couldn't really read it particularly clearly, struggling with the print. Well, we've tried to work on that, tried to make it a bit better. But there's always ways in which you can improve.
Any interesting anecdotes as far as the Salvationist is concerned? Anything that's ever you printed that you wish you hadn't printed, or some errors? Or
I think I must be careful here because I don't know who's present. But the one letter that I loved was the chap who wrote to me and said he was looking for a wife and sent a picture and would I print it in Salvationists. And I didn't think we'd better go down the Lonely Hearts column in Salvationists yet, but maybe that's a way to get the readership up. I mean, I think the most controversial thing I did was the April Fool's jokes.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, not everybody got it that it was an April Fool's joke. And I think some people thought territorial headquarters was moving to Scotland. And the Scots thought it was a good idea. So it was a problem. Look, I don't regret doing that. I probably should have made it clearer it was a joke. But, you know, next week is another edition, and you just...
That's right. Yeah, you can get forgiven, can't you?
Or moved.
Great. It's good to see you down here. Thank you very much for coming. Have you ever been to New Horizons before?
I've never been to New Horizons before. It's wonderful to be here, and it's really been good fun. Thank you very much for the invitation.
We want you to enjoy the day.
And please take a free copy of Salvationist and get your friends buying it, because if you don't use your papers, you'll lose them. And I mean that. I want to say one thing before you get me off here, because I think passionately, War Cry, Kids Alive, Salvationist, all our sales are declining. Okay, hear me very clearly, our sales are declining. And if we don't use our papers, sell them in the markets, give them to our friends, promote them for children. We've got 3 excellent resources, and I just really want to encourage you to use them, because if we don't use a resource, we lose it.
Yeah, that's excellent. And you're going to do one more thing for us later today. We've invited Dean, as the tallest person here, to actually open the craft fair this afternoon, so that everybody can see who's opening it. So Dean will be opening the craft fair at 2:30 this afternoon. Would you please greet Captain Dean? And we couldn't resist the opportunity of, on this occasion, inviting him to come back to talk a little bit about the publication, and to note that this is the official launching of his books, and nobody's read it, apart from me, of course, to be able to conduct the interview, and it's going to be here on sale afterwards. So will you please greet Commissioner Dennis Hunter.
Publishing and Supply are sponsoring the book.
They are. We're going to ask about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll see the light of day without that.
So you are quite happy with Salvationist Publishing and Supplies?
Oh, I think that's the best thing since sliced bread.
Yes, the microphone. Best thing since sliced bread. Have you ever been called that before? Yes, Jim?
Many things not.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. Yes, I've been one of them. Yeah, I'm one. Commissioner, welcome to you. And how did the other book sell?
Well, thank you, first of all. Thank you, Leopard, for inviting me. I think it's marvellous. I'm one of yesterday's men, and sometimes, you know, you get left on the shelf. But you've taken me down and dusted me, and I'm very, very grateful. The book sold 1,300 copies. It made £6,000 profit, and that money was donated entirely to the William Booth College. And similarly, all profits from this book go to Salvation Army projects.
Excellent.
I'm not off on a Mediterranean cruise next week.
Yes. Have you ever been on a Mediterranean cruise?
No, that would be a chance.
Commissioner, may I ask how long you've been retired now?
I retired in 1986. So what's that, 21 years? I'm 87 years of age now. Not too good below the knees, not too bad above the nose.
Thank you very much, and that's good. It's always good to welcome you as well, and particularly in reference to the book that we have here, After Sight and Foresight, The Gifts Reserved for Age. Tell me about the title, Commissioner.
Well, I found it in T.S. Eliot's poem, Four Quartets. It runs something like this. Since our concern was speech, and speech impelled us to purify the dialect of the tribe, and urge the mind to aftersight and foresight, let me disclose the gifts reserved for age, to set a crown upon your lifetime's effort. I hope that doesn't sound too highfalutin. I hope it doesn't.
No, thank you very much indeed. That was just here. And the actual content of this book I found very interesting, because I don't think I've ever read a book that has a conversation running through it. Where did you get this idea of Peter and Sally?
Well, at 87 years of age, I thought, if I'm going to write one last book, I'll write a love story. Everybody say, ah. And so I created Peter, who comes back to the army after having been many years away. Major Sally's story, a corps officer, takes a special interest in him. She gives him a copy of the Articles of War to read. He reads them very carefully and says, you know, they're not easy. They're not easy for a chap like me. You Salvationists may be very familiar with all this phraseology, but I'm a bit puzzled. For instance, he says, the eternal punishment of the wicked. Does that mean that Westminster Abbey doubles as the Old Bailey? And so the whole book is a book of conversations between the two. So easy to read, with bags and bags of pictures, marvellous pictures from David Dalziel. And the conversations run right the way through, 14 different conversations. And in the last, you mustn't read number 14 before you've read the previous 13. That would spoil it. But I'll give you a clue. I'm going to give you the answer that Major Sally gave to Peter in chapter 14, and you must tell me what you think was the question that Peter asked Sally. Are you following me? Yep. Yes. The answer that Sally gave to Peter in chapter 14, the culminating chapter, was this. Oh, Peter, I thought you were never going to ask me. What was the question? Are you going to marry me? Yes. It's a love story. You'll love it.
Yes, yeah. And there's always a romance, and that's really good. I was intrigued that chapter 14 actually is the beginning of the Articles of War and not the ending. You finished with the beginning. I call upon these persons. I'm trying to remember. I now call upon all present to witness that I enter into this covenant and sign the Articles of War of my own free will.
Yes, I suppose the nub of the book is this, that Peter longs to be a Salvationist. He thinks the army is just the most wonderful regiment in Christ's church. He wants to be a Salvationist. but he has intellectual problems with some of the ways in which we have worded our articles of faith. Major Story proudly says to him, they originate with the Methodist New Connection in 1838. She thinks that's marvellous. Peter says the 1838 language for the 21st century,
not so relevant.
not so relevant. Now, where was I going on that one? I've lost the thought. Yeah, what was your question?
That's a very good thing. I'm far too old to remember my questions, let alone give you answers as well. But I would like to develop something else there, Commissioner, and ask you about the book. We were here sitting talking last year, and the publication of your book then. So how long has it taken you to actually put Aftersight and Foresight together?
Well, the news descended on my shoulder last December. I was away in Dorset for a New Year break. There, can you see those 3 files? That's the handwritten manuscript. I thought I'd bring it with you here with me to show you. Any ideas, Mel, as to whether anybody would be interested in the original? All the blood, sweat and tears are in these 3 volumes here.
Yeah.
Day after day, night after night, 3 o'clock in the morning. Yes, don't exaggerate.
And are you telling us that those books are available?
Well, if I could think of some, I don't need them anymore. When I see my little book in print, I just give thanks to the Lord. I don't need these anymore. If they could find a good home and still perform a useful function, I'd be most happy to give them to you to deal with. Any ideas?
Well, I think that the ideal in New Horizons would be that we should receive those and ask Colonel Joan Williams if she could put them on her stand, and anybody who was interested in receiving them should consider making an offer for them, and therefore that we would gain not only financially by any offers that were given, and it goes to the highest bidder. And I'm sure Joan wouldn't mind doing that for us, to put them on Joan's stand in Bookworm Alley, and people can come and have a look, and maybe there will be those who would like to say, well, I'd like to offer so much for those and keep them for their own heritage, and then we will make some more money that we will put through the same Salvation Army products.
At Bookworm Alley?
At Bookworm Alley.
What price do you think we should say minimum?
Do you want to start in thousands or just hundreds?
Shall we say a fiver?
We can start with a fiver and go higher. I think we'll put them up on the Jones, and people go and have a look and can say, well, what's the latest offer? And then you can up it by £1 and so on, and then it seems to be sensible, the highest offer. Joan, is that okay? Can we present these to you?
Give Joan a clap, bless her. Well, while we're talking pounds and pence, the book sells at $8.99. I have a feeling that more than one dear friend, when he buys one, she buys one, will put a £10 note on the table and say, don't worry about the change. Just keep the pound and a penny. Or shall we say then that every 10 people that do that, that will pay for an extra book that we'll give to Joan for her splendid reference library that she set up down there. And by the way, a lady rang me from Winsford just a few days ago. She said, I've heard about Aftersight and Foresight. It's going to solve my Christmas gift problems. Put my name down for 5, please. And I can do better than that. There's a Salvationist in Sunderland who used my little book last year for soul saving. reaching out to the people, his friends. He first of all rang me and ordered 10 copies, and then when he read my letter, which is in this current Salvationist, which Dean Ballard has so kindly brought down here, he rang me again and said, make my 10 copies 20 copies. What do you think about that? Yeah. He that hath ears to hear, let him hear.
Let me ask Trevor, pass this mic to you, Trevor. What's the involvement with SPS in a project like this?
Well, Commissioner Hunter and I have become friends over the last few years. I should say, when I first took on my responsibilities at SPS, I, to my knowledge, had never met Commissioner Hunter, but he very kindly wrote to me and just wanted to offer me his best wishes. And from time to time, ever since then, I receive a card or a note, usually the first Christmas card of the year, from Commissioner Hunter. And he doesn't really know this, but he really has a very special place in my heart. We were a little involved in the last book, and the Commissioner phoned me some months back and told me of his ideas for this latest book, and I was really quite captivated by the storyline, so much so that we agreed to underwrite the whole project in its entirety financially, to ensure that the print run could be set up, and we're just delighted to have been able to help in that way.
Thank you. And I'm very, very grateful indeed.
That's a lovely cooperation, isn't it, as well? And that. Commissioner, it's been lovely to greet you and welcome you once again. Any special last-minute message you would like to pass on to anyone?
Well, I've dedicated the book to my dear wife. She was God's best gift to me. I didn't deserve her. She went to the Lord 4 years ago. So you'll find that the flyleaf has a lovely picture of her. There are splendid pictures in this book. The book's worth buying for its pictures. There's a lovely picture of dear Pauline, forever with the Lord. And I've also added, because I have such great admiration for the two men, and our good friend Trevor has already referred to them this morning, the flyleaf says, with my dear Pauline's picture, for Pauline, forever with the Lord, and with a retirement salute to John Gowans, General, and his dates, John Larson, General, and his dates, two gifted leaders and trusted friends. Now I'm going to sit down there at that table.
And we're going to invite commissioners to do that just a moment. We're going to invite them to come down. If anybody would like to purchase one of the books, then the facility is made available through cash or credit card. We will also have the invitation of the Commissioner to join us this evening, and there will be a table up near the information point where he will be sat from 6 o'clock till 1 o'clock in the morning, ready to sign any books. So it's a book signing, and it gives me a great pleasure to therefore recognise that here at New Horizons in 2006 we have the official launching of Aftersight and Foresight as authored by Commissioner Dennis Hunter. On Thursday, which will be our next an hour with